I want to introduce you Nadeesha, Gamage, and Shazni Nazeer. They are from WSO2, and I would ask you, please, if you can give us a brief description of your role within the company, and then we will proceed with these interesting questions. Nadeesha, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll start. Hi everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. So I'm Nadeesha. I'm a solutions architect at WSO2. Been in the industry for almost 15 years now. Been with the company for almost 10 years, and I've seen a lot of organizations trying to transform themselves to a API-driven organization. And today, I would like to talk about what trends that we see in the industry in terms of what the future holds for API. And yeah, so that's about me.
Thank you, Nadeesha. Shazni.
Yeah, so hi everyone. So my name is Shazni. I've been working in WSO2 for 9 years now and been in the industry for nearly 12 years. Very excited to join Nadeesha and all the audience here to talk about the future of APIs. I personally love APIs and integration domain a lot, and that's my expertise area in the company as well. And I work predominantly for Middle East and African region. Would like to share my thoughts here.
Thank you. Thank you both. Okay, so our topic for this session is the future of APIs, although I think we can agree that the future is now. I mean, the evolution of
Yeah.
developments go so fast that we need to be in constant update because the future is now. So I'm going to make a few questions that might be kind of broad, but I'm sure that you will be able to break down the answers and guide us on each of the concepts. Okay, I'm going to ask the question, and you choose who want to answer first. So the first question is, what are organizations doing now with APIs? Who wants to answer?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So there's no, so it's a very broad question, and there's no direct answer that I can give. Organizations as a whole has different strategies, and they go on different paths in terms of on doing certain things, right? So we see a lot of organizations trying to, especially banks and these large organizations who still carry a lot of technical debt, trying to move to RESTful APIs, and then trying to wrap their legacy services to make it RESTful, so that they try to unify their service offering, saying that okay, I'm going to have one service across multiple channels, and then offer this REST service for my mobile application, for my web application, and for my partners. So there's a lot of drive towards unifying the API offering by many organizations, and then trying to offer this type of a generic facade for APIs, so that you have one singular API service that can be consumed by multiple service providers. That there are multiple reasons to do that. The main or the most common reason to do that is to allow organizations to easily maintain the API offerings that they have. So rather than having 3 4 different APIs serving the same purpose for multiple channels, they could have a single API serving all channels, and then it allows them to maintain and provide a better offering out of it. So that's one key aspect to it. We also see a lot of growth in GraphQL and query-driven APIs, and then that's gaining popularity. I specialize. I work for the APAC region, and it's gaining huge popularity in APAC in terms of how organizations want to offer their APIs to different types of consumers, and GraphQL or query-driven APIs are becoming very popular in that sense. And we've seen, so API inherently has been request response driven, right? So you send a request, you get a response back, and we see that paradigm being broken down, and we see a lot of event driven APIs coming into play. So this response doesn't limit APIs to be request response. We see a lot of adoption towards WebSockets. We've seen WebSockets for a long time in the industry, especially in the financial sector, but we see that these WebSocket type of API has been adopted by other industries as well, to make it event driven. And then new concepts and new technologies like webhooks come into play, server sent events come into play, and these JMS type of endpoints also become mainstream for APIs. So that's another trend that we see. And finally, organizations are doing a lot of work in terms of providing a very what do you call it, elaborate API documentation. So 5 years ago, if you take a, or probably 7 8 years ago, if you take a hotel booking engine, you probably get one or two doing that, right? So if you are a partner or a merchant who wants to integrate with the whole hotel bookings engine, your options are very limited. But now if you search for a similar offering, now you see like hundreds of different service providers providing this API service for you. So how they try to be competitive is to offer a very elaborate API documentation, depending on this open API specification 3.0 to be specific. And then there's also a huge drive towards postman collections, where your API is well described. So in terms of adoption, the time it takes to adopt or use your API is significantly reduced, and encouraging people to move and use APIs more and more. So those are some of the trends that I see in terms of what organizations are doing right now.
Excellent, Nadeesha. Thank you. Shazni, do you want to add anything?
Well, I think Nadeesha covered a lot, but in terms of what organizations are doing with APIs, and mostly, APIs are the fuel of digital economy today, and that's driving the digital transformation. And the future is today, as you rightly mentioned at the beginning, with APIs, that's the same as well. And APIs, in fact, it's the engine to interconnect different systems. And there are explosion of APIs in different forms, like service mesh, microservices architecture. And as Nadeesha pointed out, different types of APIs are becoming available, not just the old SOAP services and RESTful services. RESTful services are predominantly still used, but multiple types of APIs have uh, taken the ground, and a lot of adoption in those types of APIs. So there's exciting times to develop applications with APIs. And yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. So we pass on to the next question. So, how are organizations adopting GraphQL?
I'll take that question. I'll try to answer. And Nadeesha also pointed out, right? So different types of APIs, and GraphQL is one such type. And GraphQL is becoming very popular these days. It's because of its inherent capabilities and addressing drawbacks of RESTful services. And but when it comes to organizations exposing APIs, they might choose RESTful APIs or some other types, depending on the demand. Meaning, their clients might only be interested in RESTful APIs, and in that case, GraphQL, even though they might understand the benefits that it brings, they might still go with RESTful APIs. Or sometimes they combine RESTful and GraphQL APIs together and expose both type of APIs, so that anyone who wish to use or consume whatever type they prefer, they can do. So adoption of GraphQL, we are seeing an increased interest in the industry, because today's applications are demanding high performance. GraphQL is addressing some of those drawbacks that RESTful APIs have, in terms of overfetching and underfetching. Meaning, RESTful APIs sometimes overfetch information, and sometimes underfetch information. And GraphQL is a query based API, which means you can request just what you want for your application, and with just one call. And so if you're familiar with GraphQL has different types of operations, like queries. Basically, that's what fetch data from a server to the application, and it just exposes one single endpoint, unlike RESTful services, where you will have like tens or dozens of resources. That's one of the key advantages of the GraphQL, and that's one reason why its adoption is getting popular because you have only one single endpoint and it's easy for client applications to interact. And so the other thing is like mutations, as its name implies, it updates something. It does a CRUD operation, not the R part, but it creates or updates or deletes something with the mutation operation and so forth. And that again is calling the same endpoint. And there are new stuff happening in the GraphQL area as well. Like one subscription functionality, there is subscription functionality that is for a client application to get notifications when there is a change in the data set on the backend system. And usually that goes in the form of a WebSocket, which Nadeesha was talking about previously, because it's an async operation. And, that's, you can see how one type of API utilizing another technology underneath because it's adopting all together. So, and there are recent development in the GraphQL, such as something called Federation, GraphQL Federation, that is again to unify your logics to one single endpoint. But again, when you have like large or complex logic implemented as one single endpoint, that can sometimes be a little problematic in certain cases. So you want to kind of divide and conquer. You have to divide your functionality and give maybe domain experts to handle that particular functionality. Imagine about a bank, or and they might have one GraphQL endpoint exposed, but underneath there might be different functionality like payments, let's say credit card details, you name it, right? Those different functionalities, different experts are in that domain, so they might want to just focus on that part. So that means we are still going back and implementing like multiple GraphQL services, but organizations don't want to leave out that one single endpoint fact that GraphQL originally brought in. So they want to divide it to different GraphQL subtasks, but also unify it as a facade GraphQL, kind of aggregating all the backend GraphQL services and expose that as the single interface for applications to use. So GraphQL, in my opinion, and I believe all of you guys will also agree that it has a bright future, and we will see more and more organizations adopting GraphQL.
Excellent, Shazni. Very interesting. Thank you. So, the next question is, how are async APIs relevant today?
So I'll answer that. So just to add to what Shastni was saying on GraphQL, the trend here is where you want to empower or give more power to your API developers, for your API consumers. So async API is another method through which this happens, right? So it gives more flexibility in terms of how you operate or how you work with your API consumers. So the main requirement is, so as I mentioned in the introduction, the API ecosystem was initially based on request response. So async APIs kind of broke that paradigm to say that, okay, you don't need to do a request to get a response, right? So you can listen to a service and that will continuously send you updates. So this was, as I mentioned initially, it was initially adopted heavily in the financial sector because there was certain overheads in terms of connecting and having this network connection open. But as the network performance improved, as the processing power of different machines and units improved, async APIs came to become a commodity type of a service that can be offered to all types of users, and that has seen a lot of new use cases coming in, right? So one good example is webhooks, right? So if you are familiar with services like WhatsApp and all that, you can nicely integrate. So rather than so if you are to consume a WhatsApp service, you have the option of going with the traditional REST API. You can also do a webhook so that you don't have to always call that particular service to see, okay, have I got a new message? Webhook will ensure that whenever new message comes in, it will be delivered to you. So that kind of improvements in protocol has also enabled application developers to build more innovative, more responsive, more custom oriented applications, and that will be the future, and we will see more and more improvements, more and more protocols coming in, adding or feature enhancements to existing protocols in improving how we interact with async type of APIs. So that's how I see this coming in play in the future.
Excellent. Very, very interesting. So, I don't know if this is for you, Shazni. How applicable APIs would be in a Web 3.0 and Metaverse world?
Yeah, so Web3 and Metaverse, like those are two buzzwords that you hear these days, right? And there's a lot of confusion about what it is, like what is Web3 and what is Metaverse and so forth. So I do have confusion as well, to be honest. So
We all
so
do. We all do.
so Web3. Let's talk a little bit about how it became Web3. And so, of course, if you're talking about Web3, there should have been something called Web1 and Web2, right? And Web1 was mostly like you see websites, and what you see in the website as static content. Like I'm talking about in 80s, 90s, probably. I think in 90s, that's when the web became popular. And the initial information that you saw in websites when you visit a website was a very static information, just a reading material, right? And it was pretty easy. And of course, the technology that was driving was complex, and it was never easy on that front. But on a user's perspective, it was a little boring, right? And Web 2 dramatically changed the picture. So it brought in a lot of dynamic nature to web. So you saw a lot of animations and some dancing pictures in the websites, right? And mostly what you could see, and still we are seeing Web 2 is still prevalent as well. What you see is like user generated content. So think about a social media application, right? You add a post or a comment or whatever, that's what you see, right? So that's something that you generated. Web3 is going one step ahead, and we are seeing it in action in some form even today, but there'll be more coming. So what is Web3 is it will generate user generated content and user relevant content. So relevant content for you, right? So which is definitely something that you must be interested of. Like for example, it will interconnect a lot of things, not just the web. It will interconnect your internal household hardwares and devices that you may be having, and maybe understand a little bit about what's happening there and populate content based on that in a website or web application or in a mobile application. So that's Web3, and that means there is a some sort of an intelligence involved there. So that's why Web3 technologies will involve artificial intelligence and machine learning type of things. But the question is how that is relevant to APIs, because we are talking about APIs here. So that's because like in the APIs gonna still be useful. Now Web 2 APIs were important because when you post something, there was someone implemented API to accept that request and generate some content and populate it. In the Web3 world, again, that will be applicable because let's say in your home, you have a device which is running out of battery, right? You don't know about it until it just dies off, right? But what if you know, like when it's like 20%, 25% of the battery life, and you are being informed about that, right? So you might have applications, you might have web applications, mobile applications knowing about it, and that's a user related content. So how that posting happens, how that consumption will happen, will still be as in the form of APIs, right? So that's where this async API, which Nadeesha was talking about in the previous question, will still be applicable because it's not a request response based thing. It's based on an event, It's based on some sort of a trigger which needs to be generated, and it's a user related stuff. So artificial intelligence, maybe WebSockets, async APIs, webhooks, type of technologies might involve there. We're still too early to talk about everything, but what we can definitely say is APIs will play a vital role in Web3. And next, talking about the metaverse, it's there is a lot of confusion on that, like what that is about, right? And including me, as I said, more than Web3, metaverse, there's a lot of confusion. It talks about a virtual world, digital world, maybe even kind of a counterpart of cyberspace, right? So meta world is a virtual world. Let's imagine in that way, and you might play games or might even involve in a like a virtual concert or whatever, somewhere happening in the world. You might attend that, uh, not physically attending there, but you feel that physical nature. So you like this event, right? So this event is a virtual event, but we are still far apart, and we can feel that it brings us closer in terms of a video conference and so forth, but still we feel that we are far apart, right? So
Yeah.
no, where people are. So what metaverse might bring is, it might bring the presence picture to the same place. Like in a conference, you will feel like you are actually sitting in a conference room. So that's a meta world, right? So now within that world, you might still do other operations like purchasing, maybe ordering something from an e-commerce website. So how will that be powered? It's pretty much going to be as part of APIs, and that technology platform and fundamentals will be used in even in the metaverse world. In future, we'll hope for the best, and in future, I was reading an article and that was talking about how one game, a video game, you have a character in that, and that character is brought into another video game, right? That's a very advanced thing which we can't really imagine at the moment. But how would that be possible? APIs might play a vital role. Who knows? We'll have to wait on that and see on that front. But as a summary, what I can say is like APIs will definitely be part of Web3 and Metaverse in some form. And again, future is bright.
Yeah, agree. I mean, looks like it seems like APIs are going to be not just part of the future technology and all that, but a foundation
Exactly, exactly.
of the
We don't
technology.
realize that API is being used, but like when you use an application, when you click a button somewhere, that's what actually is behind the scenes powering it most of the time.
Excellent, very interesting. Nadeesha, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think Shazni kind of summed up the entire picture, right? So what I can add to that is the APIs. What we've seen, the evolution of API so far has been the fabric that enables Web3. So underneath these technologies of RESTful, async APIs, GraphQL, they are the foundation for Web 3.0. And that evolution is what has enabled us to go to this metaverse kind of a virtual world. And the importance of APIs are going to grow further. I mean, everything will be based on APIs, and I mean that will be the future basically.
Exactly. Oh, well, we still have 1 minute left. I
Mhm.
was hoping maybe you can help us with one question that we had.
Mhm.
I don't know. Um, what are the best practices in your view? Which are the best practices when interconnecting APIs?
Yeah, so let me take that. So the most important thing is you need to look at interconnectivity, and you also need to think about how someone will actually consume your API. So interconnectivity is just a part of the story, but making that API consumable is the most important thing, and that's where a lot of organizations fail. And same way, that's where a lot of organizations succeed. So that's the documentation plays, I would say, the most key role in terms of enabling or making the adoption faster. and organizations should put a lot of effort in making sure that they document their APIs properly and then have a proper sandbox testing environment on top of your standard security, reliability, availability, and all that. I think most of organizations do have that already. It's just that they lack that documentation, that way of giving a seamless way of testing their APIs and then enabling users to use the APIs faster. So that's the missing piece, I would say. A lot of organizations should focus on building that capability further.
Great. Yeah, because we hear a lot in these days about customer experience and user experience, but I think that it's becoming also very relevant, and we can hear it a lot more developer experience.
Yeah, yeah. So,
So what you're saying is we need to create the environment for the best developer experiences.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, the time has gone by, and we need to stop here. I want to thank you guys for sharing this time with us, and your insights. Very, very interesting how we once again see how the future is now. And I encourage our viewers to engage with you in the WSO2 booth, and to keep learning from you, and asking questions, and thank you again, everybody, for joining us. Keep enjoying this event, keep learning a lot from our experts, and until the next time, thank you so much, Nadeesha, Shazni.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
having us.